Yeah.
And there we go. Now we're recording.
Hey guys, recording should be enabled now, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, I can
Sorry
see
about
it's
that. I'm
recording.
headed back to my production outage situation, but I think you should be good now.
Thank you
Perfect.
so much, Tracy.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, perfect. So I think we're basically good to get started. Uh, Welcome everyone to our somewhat informal discussion on the experiences we've had implementing RPA in the finance industry. Uh, this is the South Florida chapter team, which is this meeting is brought to you by, and this is us. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Jeffrey, you first.
Sure. Sure. Well, my name is Jeffrey. I've been working in the banking industry for about 22, 23 years now, and doing automation for about 7. Um, and been an MVP. This is my first year, and I'm very excited to be here and talk to you guys about what we do in banking and automation.
Awesome. So my name is Joe. I thought I was the one with more experience here in the financial sector, but Jeffrey, you beat me, by far. I
No.
think I think I am somewhere like between 12 to 15 years in the banking industry, multiple banks back home in Brazil, here in Canada. And it's my second year as an MVP, so that I beat you. Double than you. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, share my experiences, a little bit of knowledge, maybe inspire someone.
Yep. And I mean, I think you guys beat me on both counts, MVP and finance industry. I've actually never really worked in the finance industry outside of automation. I've really started my career right out of college only working on automation, and it just so happens to be that I've always at least had a hand inside a financial institution while working on automation. So my financial experience is definitely lacking, but um, automation experience, I'd like to think I'm okay at it. Uh, and yeah, that was my first year as an MVP. So definitely the
Yeah,
junior here. So that's us. And then, I mean, this is going to be basically the one and only slide that we'll be presenting today. It's going to be a sort of a loose conversation, and we do appreciate interaction from the audience. If you guys want to write your messages in chat or raise your hand, we'll invite you to turn on your camera and turn on your microphone if you want to ask a question or interject during the conversation at any point. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how it's going to be structured.
exactly. And just to add to what you were saying, Andres, when we set up this event, like we thought to be like just a informal conversation where we share our thoughts, our points of view, our experiences. And if anybody like that is watching us live here has any thoughts, has any contribution that they want to share, like it's more than welcome. We appreciate your thoughts. You don't have to wait, like just raise our hand or unmute yourself and speak up.
Um, yeah, so I guess to get started, we have the past, present, and future of RPA and finance. So I guess Jeffrey, a question for you. What was it like to what's been the journey for you to come from just automation, finance to then automation to now UiPath? What was that like for you, given that you have the most experience in finance?
Well, for me, I actually come from the background, right from the front lines of banking. Right, I started as a banker, doing transactions at Teleline, and opening accounts, servicing members. Still remember the days when we used to have practically no like automation from the software part and the core for like account opening, for example. Like everything was still paper. Luckily, we're kind of evolving a little bit beyond that, but I'm from those days where you still open an account not with a keyboard but with form or series of forms, on paper. Then, fast forward to I want to say circa 2015, and we're going to a core conversion. So our core provider, introduced us to an RPA tool. Oh, it's the greatest thing. We had no idea what it was. I think today I would have found out more of an RDA than an RPA tool, especially looking at what it is today, like the present, if you will. But that's when we first started getting our feet wet with automation. Eventually, we did a full proof of concept in an RFP, and ended up joining UiPath. So in 2017, I think we were one of the first 100 clients of UiPath, which was very interesting because and one thing that I wanted to bring up here is the fact that I'm the small guy here. Although I could lose some weight, but I'm the small guy here. You guys are in financial institutions that are much larger than us. Some of them are on the top 100, or I'm sorry, the top 10 at least, I want to say. And I did work for one that was in the top, I think, 15, and there's definitely a different environment. But I work for a financial institution that's less than 1 billion. Which is kind of interesting because a lot of people, even today, when I talk to them about this, they're like, wow, seems like, more bigger banks are involved in automation. I said, no, I think we just had the vision. We were on the right mindset at the right time to start automation. So we did. And I mean, knock on wood, we haven't regretted until now. Unless you guys make me. That's been my journey.
Well, if I can, leverage your train of thought, I come from a background where we didn't have any RPA whatsoever. So back in the day, when we wanted to automate something, we would create an entire project, right, to automate that specific process. There was no process automation. There was no process improvement. Was very, very raw, I would say, right? So I remember projects that I worked on that I would go to the database, create store procedures, database jobs, and everything that I could using all the tools that I had to automate. And one thing that I want to point out is that the financial industry, like my experience on this, is that it's around for centuries, right? So, and banks, they have so many different applications. We were talking the other day about the book of records, right? And many of these applications were created in technologies that are not even on the market anymore. So it's really hard to work with them. Of course, most of the banks, they are trying to keep up with the technology that is coming. So always bring new things to the table. But the legacy is always there and will always be there, right? There's no way a financial institution, regardless the size, can get rid of the legacy, right? That's always there. So it's always a challenge to automate those things, even with RPA, right? Of course, RPA makes it easy to automate legacy system, click here, click there, but the challenge is always there, right? So lately, when I started working with UiPath and getting to know more use cases hidden there, talking to other folks in the industry, so I realized how much potential there is in the financial industry to automate and to save money. So it's an incredible journey to see the past, the old-fashioned way of doing automations, hard code, not hard code, but hard work, and now you can say, you can prompt the Gen AI and create an automation, in minutes. So that's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think we're pretty lucky to be in financial institutions that have embraced automation, right? Because I feel like, though obviously the bigger players are all keenly aware of all the newer technologies and trying to move into it, there's still a lot of legacy players that are a lot of like an old boys club, where any new technology, especially one that might pose any sort of risk from a sort of data exposure, perspective, they might not be so quick to have an RPA team internally or work with an RPA implementation partner, just out of almost fear of the unknown. But really, the RPA value proposition is, like you guys said, being able to talk to legacy applications and new applications all in one workflow. And I mean, that's why that's really the great part of using RPA in financial industries, is being able to integrate that whole very large stack of different applications for different product offerings usually.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up the sort of the grandfather of automation in banking. That's our core banking systems, because I think Joel touched on it a little bit. And basically, the tools that we had was software development. Bigger banks and financial institutions had the ability to get their own teams to develop these applications, customize them, and evolve them over time. But the medium to small size institutions did not. We have a third-party core provider, and we're relying on them to make the innovations, if you will. And they're so overwhelmed with all the things that there is changing, compliance and things like that, that we never get all that we need from our core providers, I feel. And what ends up happening is, oh, you got to throw a couple of people at that process and do some more. Well, now we have a tool that we can say, well, no, we're going to automate this. We have RPA that can help us. But that's really where everything really kind of is. One of our systems, that's why we call it our core, right? Everything's either comes from or goes to our core. And then all these systems around it have to flow, and they flow through people as it stands for the most part. And this is where automation is a welcome advent, because it really helps us kind of bringing these systems together and make sure, I think, the flow of data. Joel, you're talking about SQL expression and pulling data from the past. I think now we can use automation to make sure that the flow and validate the flow of information, make sure that it's right, and it has a lot more capabilities than we had before. Because I have systems that I don't have access to their SQL databases. I cannot even pull to validate anything, but now I'm able to go to their web page or to their system and pull that data and then go compare it to our book of records, that kind of stuff. Another thing that I want to bring up too, in terms of the past, the present, the future, is, and I mentioned earlier about RDA. I think automation has always been in the mind of everybody, right? Software development is a form of automation. And as they evolved on everybody's minds, it comes up with tools now, batch files and, command line, SFTP for file transfers and things like that. Who can forget Excel macros and VBA? I mean, I remember I used to be like, almost glorified for knowing VBA inside of Excel, doing all kinds of funky stuff. But before it became RPA as it is today, robotic desktop automation, which is what a lot of people call screen scraping technology, which is basically based on OCR, was starting to make its way. It's almost like a macro from an optical character recognition. And a lot of them got branded RPA. And there's a lot of people today that still look at that as that's RPA. RPA is, I don't think it's anymore just the automation of your desktop. It's beyond that, right? It's the automation of your connections, whether it be to a database, whether it be to an API of a system that you have. It's the interactions with humans. That's one of the things that, I find that in UiPath, I still haven't seen another vendor that can provide that, where you can have approval processes, you can have validation stations to do certain things where humans are really needed in the middle of the process. And even when I first started with UiPath, to make that, it was, you had to do either your custom stuff, like an API or some type of an interface for them to use it, or you had to stack your processes to like be in the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now it's all flows, kind of like unified. That's process automation. It's not just about taking one screen and just working out of that one, and anything outside of here has to be manually done. So I think that this is really a big difference, and I know a lot of folks, because when I started, we had a tool that was branded itself an RPA tool. Today, I recognize, and at the time, I had no idea what it was. you could have told me it was AI, I would have believed you. But I think the
Which
brand.
one is that?
That seems to be the case for everything nowadays.
Well, that's Gen AI is like the new, RPA of our technology now. But the tool really was lacking in functionality, and I heard it's still around, and some institutions are still using them, but it's really limits on what we can do. You can't have true RPA functionality without a true RPA tool. So tool is really, really very important.
I think you covered the present state of RPA automation really, really well just now with like the whole human in the loop, and these are all processes that I could currently have in production in my institution. Having things done on Action Center. I mean, when they recently released the custom form actions that you could do, it was almost like as powerful as UiPath apps, but like you can get humans to validate anything at all. It really takes away those edge cases for some automations that are really valuable, except it can't be done without a human in the loop in some cases. But then looking to the future and thinking about all that can be done with generative AI in collaboration with RPA, that's when it gets really crazy, with things that maybe you need to make a decision on a large chunk of text just to determine if it contains some semantic meaning that, some entity is not a good entity to make a loan to. Like that's now an automation that we can make instead of having someone read 1,000 pages and then integrate that with a legacy application that actually would approve or disapprove the loan and check their account balance or whatnot.
I want to make 2 points here regarding the present and the future. So the present, when it comes to the present state of automation, I feel that most of the companies, at least bigger corporations like ours, financial institutions and so on, they are still on the true core RPA, right? Which is to automate like repetitive tasks, manual tasks that human would do on the desktop. So that's still the core of the RPA automation, in my opinion. Maybe, and I believe this is going to change. I don't know how fast or how slow, how long it's going to take, but the future that we are seeing right now is going to be a little bit different, right? As you guys were saying, like Gen AI and all these capabilities that can, take decisions or make decisions on the fly based on past experience. These are the things that are going to be there. I read this week, what was the bank? The biggest bank in the world, I believe, JP Morgan, just launched a copy, not a copy, right? But its own version of ChatGPT. What are these cases? What are the applications that are going to create? I don't know. But this is kind of a breaking news, right? I've never heard of a bank creating such a thing. So, and to be very honest, the opportunities with such a technology are endless, right? They have actually a blank canvas. They can do whatever they want with like a ChatGPT, I would say, right? So, for example, you were saying the use case you were describing, Andres. I feel that Gen AI can, for example, summarize a contact center, right? So agents will chat with customers all the time, right? Gen AI can simply just grab all the information, summarize, get the sentiment, pick specific cases to someone to review. If the overall situation of that case was okay, it can just let it go. So things like that, I believe not Gen AI, but AI as a whole will tremendously help the companies.
I agree. I think Gen AI, like you were talking about contact center transcript automation, and I think that's a space that's really helpful. Like you get, depending on your volume, obviously hundreds of calls, thousands of calls, and millions of calls a day. And to have even the executive team be able to say, okay, I want to know what's our biggest customers' complaints, how many customers are complaining about this, like
Exactly.
like now Gen AI basically allows you to go there and ask questions, like feed all the transcripts from our contact center and ask any question your heart desires. So your CEO and COO might even have different questions that they want to ask. Your customer experience chief executive might have a different set of questions, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's very, very, very powerful for sure.
Yeah, I read somewhere this contact center use cases. I haven't seen them in practical use, but definitely the transcripts are feeding the AI, right? And the AI is work on the background to gather all this information, right? And then to serve all the stakeholders with the most appropriate information they need, depending on each case, of course. This is very powerful.
Yeah, no, and like just integrating that capability into the regular RPA process to, talk to all of the legacy applications. At that point, really, you're making processes that previously were impossible with dumb RPA. There's no more requirements for there to be super structured processes. Now we can open up our discovery pipeline to more abstract requirements, and with that, basically bring a lot more cost savings. And what you said about the basically ChatGPT for Chase, I hadn't seen Chase's version yet, but I had read an article about Bank of America's version of it called Erica, and it said that it increased revenue by like 20% or something to the bank just from enabling the conversational agent to their clients, because it would sort of not only enhance the customer experience, but suggest different banking products to the clients directly. This might be a little bit outside of just pure RPA, but I thought that was pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. But it, it's very it's a very sensitive area, right? When you allow such a tools to interact directly with your customer, like it's a sword of two edges. It can cut both ways. It can go right, can go wrong, depending on how you train, how you define your model, right? So I see all the benefits that can bring, but I am, probably because of my background, I am a little bit skeptical with such use cases, because I also look at the security side, right, and also potential harms that this can bring. AI is a very powerful tool, but we have to be very cautious when using, right? Especially when it comes to end customers, like financial institution, regardless the size, one problem, one issue with a customer can become a huge thing, right? And then you can lose your trust. You can lose your the image can be broken. So there's a lot at stake here.
I think there are some tools already in the market that use and have that in mind, because like you obviously when it generates a prompt or generates a response from a prompt, it has a degree of confidence, like most AI generated models.
Yeah.
And then it can tell, like, if I'm not satisfied with the prompt, I might want to just send it over to Joel and then have a human answer that question to the user. It also can provide that answer later that you can then query and say, give me all the answers that you gave customers, and by the worst score to the best score. Now you can kind of audit them and kind of say, okay, well, this is wrong, and supervise, teach the AI that was wrong, and what was right. And obviously you will do that with actual information, because I think the knowledge base of the AI is really what's going to make it basically have better or worse results.
Yeah. And I feel that these technologies will evolve, and we are going to get more and more confident with them over time. I remember when CRM, like customer relationship management, came. There's a very famous case. I think it was Target. They started to gather data and send out these emails with promotions and final sales and so on and so forth. So there was a guy. He was a father, and he went to the store because excuse me, just a second.
I think I know the story.
Yeah.
So
Right.
he got his daughter got an email, with pregnancy products, pregnant woman products, and the guy went to the store complaining. Long story short, the store knew that this girl was pregnant. The father didn't. So of course, this kind of things are fine-tuned over time, and they improve. But these are the kind of issues that I'm afraid.
Right. You're talking about the ethical implications of Gen AI.
That too.
I mean, if you really want to get into that, I mean, there's some processes that do these sort of smart decisions that you could even implement at the HR level, where you have an RPA process that's consuming resumes and decisioning on them, and the ethics of that get really, really pretty murky pretty quick. So you're deciding someone's entire life based on the decision of a Gen AI, and this sort of stuff isn't even science fiction or anything like that. There's already many product offerings on the market that do basically exactly that. So
Well, sorry, Jeffrey, but the other day I was watching a documentary about the bias, AI biased, and essentially, like something that I've never thought about or heard about, but essentially, models are trained with specific data that at the end of the day they're biased, right? So, for example, one very specific case that I saw, a black lady couldn't have her face recognized by the system, and when at the end of the day she came to know that the model was trained with mostly white faces, right? So
Yeah.
I got
It happens a lot, and I remember having a vendor once trying to sell us on this AI to basically automate. This was a few years back. Now there's better models than that, but they wanted to sell us on a decisioning for a loan origination system, right? So you get a car, do you not get a car, right? Kind of scenario. And their idea of building this engine was out of the decisions that humans would have made, with the idea that humans will always be unbiased. And I think we're biased, and I think that's why AI is also biased. But if you think of it that way, you're always going to build biases into your AI because you're bringing the biases we already made in the loans. And I remember us having that conversation. Is I don't want to know what loans got decided by who. I want to know what loans did we decline that shouldn't have not been declined. I want to know about the loans that got approved that shouldn't have been approved. That's what I want to know. I want the AI to be able to tell me what I don't know. And of course, that becomes a bigger problem and the data problem. But it was just interesting to me is that was their go-to is, oh yeah, we'll build you an AI. Just give me all the loans that you've decided in the last 2 years, and we'll build you an AI that's going to perform that way. Well, that's not what I want.
Yeah, no, and I mean that goes into the like a principle of AI safety design, which is the transparency of an AI's decision-making process, and being able to query like, hey, why did you make that decision? That seems to be a pretty, something that they place a lot of importance on when they do design these models. Oh man, but to bring it back a little bit to RPA specifically, and this is a great conversation. I think we could finish up the hour just talking about the ethical implications of AI, I'm sure. But I kind of wanted to go back to something you'd said earlier, Jeffrey, how you said that software development is a type of automation. I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that's like very true. And I find that when I'm designing RPAs, sometimes I'm doing something that is basically a short way of doing something that would normally necessitate an entire custom application to serve something like an internal need to, even if it's something as simple as creating a form to input into a system that doesn't have into a database, so that people that don't know SQL, like I'm just thinking of the simplest possible scenario. Normally, you'd need a front-end application to be able to allow normal business users to integrate into that, and how RPA sort of enables that, but it's specifically inside financial institutions, how there can be these sort of unique performance indicators that are not necessarily time saved. And for example, what are some examples of automations that you guys have that might have not been necessarily just hours saved in the financial industry, and what are some of the benefits that you were looking out of getting from those automations?
I can get you one example that I already saw. Uh, um, I already saw out there. For example, um, fee reversal, right? Um, you get charged incorrectly. The bank has to reimburse that. So there's a process where the human has to you call contact center. They will assess. They will validate your information, and then eventually do the fee reversal, right? Um, that right the automation can help in many ways, not only saving time but also being more accurate, right? So the accuracy of the process, because when you implement the automation, you make sure it's always right, or most of the time, much more than the human at least. So the accuracy would be a huge saving here, right? There's no rework on that transaction anymore. That's one thing that I saw already. Jeffrey, do you have anything else?
No, I mean, I just wanted to add to your topic, because I think that was an interesting one. I know there's a lot of conversation and compliance now with fee rebates and how much fees, especially overdraft fees, that banks and credit unions are charging. And I think automation can help with applying sort of concise, assessment of those fees and which ones should and should not be rebated. And I'm not sure, is that where you were going with your topic, but there's so many, obviously those use applications that we can see in banking. It's just a matter of zoning in onto each institution is different, and I think that's what makes it more challenging. Is thinking about the use cases that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for example, one for me was what do you call it? Sometimes we have audit findings that say that maybe people shouldn't have any access to a certain audit trail of documents. So we have some automations that move files around or implement audit trails that are then not able to be touched by any humans, and then that sort of verifies that no one has touched these documents other than an automation, and it makes it so that the performance indicator that we're getting out of the automation is being sure that it's impossible for anyone to fudge any numbers at any point or commit any sort of fraud. So risk savings is another KPI that's not necessarily time saved that I've gotten out of some finance specific RPAs. I remember, I think you had mentioned something in another conversation, Jeffrey, about like a customer experience.
Customer satisfaction.
Customer satisfaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
From some RPAs that you've worked on.
And the customer satisfaction not necessarily has to be the end customer, right? It can be employee satisfaction, right? Because employees are also customers of the automations. So one very simple and very casual or casual in a sense that happens all the time, like accounts unlock or password reset, right? So I, as an employee, I love when I have self-service that I can just go to a portal and fill out a form and get my problem solved. And what I saw lately in different places were, for example, my account is locked. I call a number, I go to a website, maybe call is better because if my account's locked, I cannot get into the system. But regardless, and then the system already detects, oh, your account's locked, right? So do you want to unlock? Yes, of course. So then it's right away. There's no human interaction, right? It's just the system. It can be an RPA, it can be like many different ways of solutioning this problem, right? But I am very happy. I'm very satisfied that my problem was solved right away. I didn't have to talk to anyone. I didn't lose much time. So win-win.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the example that Andres was talking about is, and I remember this during conversion. I'm sorry, during the pandemic, our online bankings or most online bankings are a lot of times there's thirds and fourth providers that connect to our core, and they only do a certain amount. And during the pandemic, we always had the branches to rely on, or before the pandemic, I should say. If you needed to do something that was more complicated, well, you just go to a branch, call the contact center, so on and so forth. But now contact centers are overwhelmed. The branches are limited in operations. So there was this need to enhance the online bankings, but there was not enough time because now we need developers, real developers. Not that we're not the real developers, but I'm talking about high code developers, not low code. So there's just not enough time.
It's just getting worse, Jeffrey.
Oh yeah, no, you're just offending us more and more, Jeffrey. And I was
More and more. Just putting salt in the wound. That's it. But so because of that, then there was always the ability to have the user send information through forms in some of these systems, and then have RPA handle the interpretation of those forms, the communication mining, which basically is what it boiled down to, and then lead that into to an RPA process, or pass it into a human, depending on the complexity of the processes or the problem that the member was facing. And I think that was something that today but like, just think of emails. We were talking about Gen AI, but aside from Gen AI, there's a lot more AI in the RPA, and communication mining is, I know it's one that we've talked a lot about in the past. And we get emails from customers. We get chat message from customers. A lot of that is passive and can be replied at any time. Communication minds can help us with that, and RPA can help us as well. Again, is that whole human in the loop? Does it go to a human? Does it automatically respond and process something and just inform them and everything is okay? That's kind of like that process automation rather than just simple desktop automation.
Well, you touched on a point very interesting, and I was on a call earlier today about product circle with UiPath, and they were discussing the process mining, task mining, and so on and so forth. And they were giving examples specifically on this topic. So process mining, for example, is there to see what's going on with different applications, right? And then it can capture all these scenarios and showcase potential benefits or potential improvements. And they give some actual real examples where the process were going loops and it was taking much more a lot of time, and it was costing. And when the process mining identified that, they were able to reduce a lot of the cost, a lot of the time and work that was required in that process. So yeah, we as you said, we were talking a lot about Gen AI, but there's much more in this whole platform that can help every institution, including financial institutions, than simply AI, right?
I really like that you guys brought up both communications mining and process mining, because that leads to another question I had for you guys, which is both of those are pretty new features of the UiPath platform. And I know I've looked into communications mining, and we've been trying to find use cases for it, and we think we've found quite a few. But actually implementing all of these newer features, especially the AI heavy ones in the UiPath platform, which there seems to be more and more every day. Like just today, I think the what do you call it, the generative AI integration service activities released as well to general availability. So there's always more and more new features being dropped that, greatly increase our capabilities to automate stuff. But at least I'm keenly aware of them and always trying to keep up with what they can do and trying to play with them on my own time. But I haven't been able to implement neither process mining nor communications mining within my financial institution, just because of the sort of regulatory framework that exists before being
Yeah.
able to adopt all of these newer technologies. And I don't know, have you guys been able to actually implement this in your institution, or what challenges have you faced in using the newest features from the platform?
Well, it's tough because I can't comment too much because there's a lot of proprietary and NDAs agreements. So what I can tell is the overall perspective of any financial institution is going to be very. I'm not going to say any financial institution, but the risks, the stakes are very high, right? As I was saying earlier, there's a lot of risk, and I believe that implementing new things like this is challenging, right? We're dealing with people, real people. We are dealing with money, other people's money. So that's very, very sensitive, right? People's information, you say about PII, personal identifiable information, PCI, personal payment cards information. So if you get a leak, in your company where someone dumps the database of credit cards on the internet, on the dark web, like your entire institution is screwed, right?
Yeah.
Not only because of the penalties and all the lawsuits, but your reputation is just on the floor. So it like we have to be very careful and very skeptical with these technologies. So I'm not saying not doing it, but do with cautious.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of these tools that require AI. So there's actually a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. That is, so one of them, there's always the on-premise option, which I think us banks we love on-prem. It's like, does it have on-prem? Okay, I'm on board. Does it not? Oh no, it's in the cloud. No, I'm sorry, I got to pass on that. Uh, but it's what you said. It's the risk that scares us the most. But like process mining, I think it's a great tool because we sometimes are so relying on the actual subject matter experts, the SMEs, right? That we don't get the exposure of the catalog of processes that actually get executed in every area, every corner of our institutions. So processing is great, but if we're taking process information and storing it somewhere that hackers can easily have an access and can easily be breached, then we're really not helping ourselves in any formal way. So again, containing it in on-prem is really the other option. The other thing too is the new is it called AI trust layer? I believe it's what it's marketed as. It's that layer between the AI engines at UiPath and us that allows us to filter out PPI, which is the information, socials, date of births, any information that can identify us as an individual. Strip that away because generally you don't need that for most of your processing. And once you can sort of certify and remove all that information, really not storing everything is the next step. Because if you're storing everything at any time, can always be retrieved. So that's where that trust layer really kind of serves the purpose of, is trying to remove that and trying to keep the information sort of in memory until the process is complete, and then destroying it afterwards so it doesn't get stored.
Yeah,
I think it's the first good step. I don't think it's that we have to always be mindful of our data and our information, but I think that is probably one of the things that a lot of AI companies are now concerned with.
and you brought up a very good point that I remember we saw during the MVP summit back in June in Seattle. You guys were there as well, which is the getting rid of the PII or PCI data. I don't remember. I remember it was regarding process mining, task mining activities and tools, and they were showcasing like potentially features that would allow us to keep an eye on the database for that type of data, and whenever that data was identified, just remove it. And I saw that very like with very good eyes. To be honest, I like that very much because, as you said, we don't have to store that data, right? The more data we store, and we have to understand that RPA, right, is in the middle, right? Is between the user and the target application. So, for example, credit card information, it's on whatever target application is processing that information, right? The user is seeing that on the screen, and the RPA is can be potentially leveraging that to process a transaction, right? So I was describing the fee reversal, right? It needs the account number, probably credit card number, debit card number, right? But it just needs during the transaction, right? So it will be there in memory while the transaction is being processed, but you don't have to store that, right? Maybe some use cases will need to put that in the queue, which might be like challenged, right? I would say there's different ways of doing that, but store that, not at all, right? You don't have to keep that data in the UiPath database at all. That's my opinion, right? And if I am monitoring the database and I find such information, which can be done through regex expressions, for example, right? I just delete it, just get rid of that.
Oh man, you guys bring up such good points. So today, with the general AI activities that launched, there's actually one activity called PII filtering, which is such like a double-edged sword sort of thing, because you're using Gen AI, meaning you're feeding the PII to the Gen AI model, and it's finding it and it's obfuscating it. So you're giving it to the Gen AI model for it to hide it. So
But
it's
then, see, if a financial institution is using such a tool, like it should be all in-house, right? The data should be from
On-prem.
the on-prem, should not go out. We shouldn't be using. Of course, it will depend on the use case, right? But we shouldn't be leveraging outsourced data to feed our models for this kind of example, right? And we should give our data to other folks as well.
Well, now you bring up another point, and both you and Jeffrey have mentioned this, that we got to be super careful with our data, and we should always keep it in-house, and we should always go for the on-prem options. But I have a quarrel with that. My institution tends to be very cloud native, where we were one of the first people to really embrace going to the cloud instead of having a lot of on-prem infrastructure. And now when we say on-prem, we actually mean on-prem on the cloud account provider of infrastructure that we control. And even that, I would be it's a little tough to be as good as Amazon at internet security. So I feel like if you come from a smaller institution, there's a lot of value in actually considering the cloud option as the more secure option and the more resilient option. So I don't know. I don't feel like it's as clear cut as you should always go on-prem every single time, and it's safest in the server in the basement. Like it's and I know this is a very old argument.
No,
but
but I totally agree with you, because we also have to take into account the use cases that are going to be automated, right? Because when you say financial institutions, it's a very broad expression, right? Sentence. We may say, oh, we are going to automate the human resource department of a bank, right? Oh, that's cool. That's a much lower risk than automating the PCI data, right? So then cloud, of course, it's a very pleasant way of doing the automation or standing up the platform. And I know banks, even here in Canada, that they went for cloud in the first implementation. I don't know how successful they are. What are the problems? Of course, they have challenges, but all those things have to be considered, right? Um, it always depends on the risk appetite of the company. Even banks, like we all come from financial institution. We have different risk appetites. Our institution as a whole. It depends on the use cases as well that are going to be automated. Like one bank may not want to automate specific things that are going to be sensitive, right? Just generic use cases. So a lot of variables that we have to consider when deciding on-prem, cloud, PCI data, non-PCI data, and so on and so forth.
I wanted to add to that because I think that touches on the realm of cybersecurity, which as an RPA, we shouldn't necessarily care for because our IT departments behind us are the ones worrying about that, right? But some of us are small, me, that don't necessarily have a cybersecurity department, with red teams and blue teams working behind the scenes to make sure that everything is kosher. But ultimately, what we do need to make sure is that we have a detection, whether it be a team or third party, a software that can detect, because rather we be on the cloud or rather we be on-prem, we're always risk, being breached. If we don't have the tools to be able to detect that quickly, that's when information gets lost. So having the not only to detect, to respond, and then to address any vulnerabilities afterwards is really, really important, and that applies to both sides. So if you apply those concepts and you have those kind of tools, which hackers are always trying, like we talked about Gen AI earlier, and I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I want to try to keep a pulse on time too. But what I was going to say, we're talking about Gen AI. Gen AI is being used now for social disruption in terms of hackers trying to do social engineering to kind of get at us, to expose us. And I know of an institution, again, because of NDAs and whatnot, I don't want to name any names, but I know of an institution that was breached. Simple client, send an email with an attachment, something that was very typical for their business. Any user would have opened that attachment. It just so happened that client had been breached themselves, and it was the hacker sending the attachment, and it was breached. Luckily, they were using some state-of-the-art tools. Within minutes, that breach was alerted to the third party, which they didn't have in-house, outside, and immediately got on. In 15 minutes, the system was completely under control. The systems that had been touched were identified, and the hackers were out of the system within 15 to 30 minutes later. Now, that is a successful cybersecurity strategy. Had they not had that, they could have gone months without them even detecting or knowing. Again,
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you're on-prem or on the cloud. It's just a matter of how good are your tools for cybersecurity. Again, something that we could spend 2 or 3 hours talking about.
Exactly. And I love this topic. I learned, like, the last few years I have been working very closely with our security office, and I've been learning so much, and it's such an amazing area to explore. But one thing, like we were talking about on premises or cloud, UiPath is releasing. I don't know how. Well, I believe this is public, but it's UiPath. I know they are at least with a few clients on a dedicated cloud, meaning they have dedicated infrastructure. You are going to have the cloud experience. You're going to be officially on UiPath cloud, but you are going to have dedicated infrastructure on the back end. So then it's kind of the best of the. Yeah, it's the best between the two worlds, right? You're still on premises, you have controls over the hardware to some extent, and you still have the cloud, all the good stuff that is releasing all the time. No current issues, meaning you don't have to upgrade any OS, you don't have to patch anything. So all that good stuff comes with it. So I think that's something that is becoming, or is going to be more more popular in the near future.
Especially with financial institutions. Yeah. Oh man,
Exactly.
there's so many other places I want to go with this. Like the challenges you face working so closely with cybersecurity. I'm sure that there's some not always positive ideas, some things that maybe have gotten shut down by that department, or our specific tolerances and opinions on test environments versus production environments, which is something else we
Wow.
wanted to touch on. We feel like we left quite a bit left on the table, and oh man, we didn't even get to
You know,
ask
Andre,
questions.
Andres, I think we need to probably do another section, and I would like to hear from the people on the call of any topics that they would like us to focus on. If anybody wants to either type it on chat or unmute and speak to us, but I think that would be great.
Yeah, I'd be super appreciative if
Yeah.
anyone wants to suggest any topics.
Or Austin?
While we wait for someone to type or to unmute, any final thoughts for the session
This was
from
really
you
fun.
guys? Huh?
This was really fun. I really like the
Yeah.
sort of unstructured structure.
Right, and I think it's always interesting when we get together to talk about stuff, because we do come with different experiences and automation in our individual companies, because we have different structures and different processes. But I always end up walking away with something new that I learned that we ourselves might not be encountered. So yeah, it's always great to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to have this kind of conversations because, well, we don't see everything, right? Even though, like, I work for a big corporation, like, I'm not aware of everything that is happening, right? So the way I learn the most is talking to people. So I really enjoy this kind of conversation, very unstructured conversation where we can just put out our thoughts and learn from the other folks.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Prof. Monica Reyes, future learning and work in AI. I think she. Would that be a future topic are you suggesting?
So yeah, I believe so. Is that right, Monica? Professor Reyes?
You can feel free to come on and speak if you'd like. I'm
Yes.
interpreting.
Actually, we were thinking. Yeah. We were thinking before whether in learning there would be something that you would just put in your head and then it would automatically give you learning. Would that happen? I saw one picture about it because there's like neural in one of
Neuralink?
the life sciences, neural link. So would that happen, like, and then soon you would be like a cyborg that you would just put all those learnings on your head?
I mean,
There was once, that I've seen neural links because there are those who have disabilities,
Yeah.
so they will put it there.
Yeah.
I love the idea. Let me tell you, if I was able to just sit in a chair and just let information come in, kind of like in the Matrix way, I would love that.
Yeah, me too.
Sign me up.
I saw the guy. I watched an interview with the guy that installed the first Neuralink, and I was just amazed, by the things that he was able to do after he installed that. Man, that's a topic for another conversation because it's so we can go so wide and so deep in many different forms and on this topic. I simply love this kind of things.
Yeah, no, we'll have to wait until the UiPath assistant drops for Neuralink, and then we'll really get into that.
Hopefully, we could learn a lot of like 10 languages at the same time.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Anyway, because I've seen before, there's one who got married, who married a hologram, just one. So perhaps there will be a lot more in the future.
Yeah. Let's see what the future holds. All right, so 6:34. I think we're good to wrap it up. From my side, I thank you guys, everybody that's staying on the call, and I thank you, Andres, for putting this together. Jeffrey for sticking around and sharing your knowledge. I really appreciate this.
Yep, I'm going to send this PowerPoint out to everybody. We're just going to have our LinkedIn pages, or just search our names. I'm sure we'll pop up. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Jamal, for your suggestion on document understanding as a topic for the next one. I'll definitely write that down.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you guys so
so
much.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Everyone. Thanks
Bye.
for the question, Monica.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.